Hi, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of The Backstory on Marketing and AI. If you haven't already done so, please visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for all of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the newly released book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine, Prepare Your Team to Win. And you can find more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, the big question on the minds of the CMOs and entrepreneurs and the C-suite is how will AI impact their activities throughout their marketing department and certainly with their agencies? Well, let's see if we can help you out today. Whether you're a small or a large business getting AI into the workplace and the digital space, it can be an enormous differentiator against those that are laggards there. Today, we're interviewing Nick Usborne. He is a copywriter, speaker, and trainer, and this is right in the middle of AI and its effect on marketing. So as I mentioned, let me tell you a little bit about Nick. He is a digital copywriter pioneer. His influential role has shaped the skills of numerous writers venturing into the online space, making him a key figure in the evolution of the craft. He's an award-winning copywriter with an impressive track record and has earned 15 awards for his copywriting prowess, boasting major clients such as Citibank and Apple. He's also a global trainer and influencer, and his impact extends globally as an accomplished trainer, conducting events for prominent companies like Yahoo, Intuit, Walt Disney Attractions, Novartis Pharma, and John Deere. His influence transcends borders, reaching over 97 countries through both live training sessions and online courses. Nick's commitment to advanced digital copywriting is evident in his latest course called Future-Proof Copywriting, where he integrates the power of AI with emotional intelligence. Nick, welcome, and so good to have you.
Thank you, and thank you for the generous intro. Make me sound good. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. Well, obviously you've done a lot, and it's amazing. I mean, awards and everything. That's pretty fantastic. So, how did you get into marketing and AI? What's your backstory on that?
On AI, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing a lot of work with chatbots. And chatbots, you either kind of build them out as a kind of conversation path. If you say this, then go down this path. But we were also integrating some fairly rudimentary AI into chatbots back then, 5 or 6 years ago. So I've been watching and interested, but probably in common with most people, there was that moment, when ChatGPT suddenly burst on the scene. And I remember, like, within a few days of its launch, I tried it. And the same as so many other people, I just had that incredible mind-blowing moment of, oh my goodness, this is just extraordinary. Because I felt like there'd been a 30-year advance in within a week or something. It was so in advance of anything that had come before. So that's when I really kind of doubled down and looked at it. And looked at it through the eyes of a copywriter, a marketer. And yeah, since then I've been kind of deep diving into it and looking at its strengths, but also trying to be aware of the limitations, however impressive it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I had basically the same experience with that first time using ChatGPT, and I was blown away by what it could do. And
Yeah.
since then, we've been using it like crazy, just about everything we do. Instead of sitting there trying to figure out, how do I design this video script or put together something, and you just say, just typed in the prompt for ChatGPT, and it's just absolutely amazing what it can do for you.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. It still blows my mind every day.
Yeah, yeah. I just, it's so funny though, when you think the way I understand it, these large language models, they're basically scouring and scraping the whole internet, and I just can't imagine how much data that is. I mean, it's got to be, an enormous thing, and it's just fascinating to think about what the technology is underlying that.
Well, and also the fact that at its most basic level, an LLM works by anticipating or guessing the next word in a sentence or the next token. And so I said, okay, that's how it works. But then I find it really hard to reconcile that with it's almost like the insights ChatGPT can come up with, where it feels like a co-intelligence, to quote Ethan Mollick. And it really does feel sometimes like you're in conversation with an intelligence. And how does that come about from a basic technology of basically guessing the next word in a sentence? So I can't even begin to claim to understand that, but it is extraordinary.
Yeah, it really is. It was funny. We were doing a brainstorming. So I'm in the American Marketing Association here in Atlanta, and we were doing a brainstorming on various things. And so there were half of us using ChatGPT and half of us not using ChatGPT, and it was kind of fun to see the differences that kind of came up when doing that. So yeah, and it has hit definitely the ability to be a part of just about every activity that you're doing in marketing.
You're right. Right. Okay. A collaborator.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, with AI, with ChatGPT, but AI more generally, being being the guesser of the next best word and putting it into nice grammar and whatever, which just amazes me. So how is that going to affect copywriters, and how are they going to survive here with AI making, encroaching onto their turf?
A lot of companies are treading very delicately around this question, but I think there's certainly a level of copywriters that have already seen their work pretty much disappear. There are a lot of people who used to make some money by creating low price content, and a lot of those people not in North America, but in Africa and India and places like that, and that kind of lower level work is already being done now by ChatGPT. And as it gets better, which I'm sure it will, that tide will rise. And so, yeah, I don't think I think it'd be misleading to say or dishonest to say that this won't impact copywriters. I think it will, and we have to, as copywriters, we have to up our game. I've been aware of it, and I am aware of it, and I'm working. I'm working to protect my own living as well as other people's,
Mhm.
because it does do really well. Now, if you just use it with people push back to me and say, oh, well, it can never be as good as a human. And then that may be true. But I think a lot of people who talk to me that way are simply typing in a 5-word prompt and then being unimpressed by the output. And I scared some people the other day. I did a live demo of where I actually put in a long prompt with a lot of context and a lot of examples and a lot of instruction on tone of voice. And then I asked it to create an avatar of an ideal customer based on that. And then I put that in. I said, okay, now write me a blog post on. And it was really, really good.
Hmm.
So I think that's one of the things that copywriters and marketers should be looking at is to learn how to do this well. Right, learn how to be a really good, positive collaborator with these tools. Because if you put in the effort, you really can get some very impressive output.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that one thing I go back and forth on the one hand, like even in high school and college is, you want kids to learn how to write a paper. But on the other hand, you also need them to have the skills to be able to structure the prompts so that they can do exactly like what you're doing and have the experience to kind of grow up in their high school and college years to be able to really take the capabilities of ChatGPT and not just write a paper, but to really, expand their knowledge, expand their capabilities, and be able to drive the world forward, so to speak. And I think what you just mentioned is your example that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I got so many kind of conflicting thoughts and emotions around this because, hey, I'm of a generation where I started out in the ad agency business in the 80s in London. And back there, creative was king. Like every ad agency began with the name of the creative director or the top copywriter. Creative was what drove everything. And that with over 30, 40 years has changed. Most, marketing now is data driven.
Mm.
So part of me does miss that And that's part of what I try to teach and train people. I say, let's bring that back. Let's bring that human part, that, the emotional intelligence part. And also because as remarkable as these tools are, I was describing in a presentation the other day that GPT-4 has never eaten ice cream. It can't eat ice cream. It's never walked on the beach and felt sand between its toes, or the kind of taste of salt in the air. It can read about it, but it can never do it. And there is something there. And I think the emotional side, our emotional experience of the world, is a differentiator. The other point I'd make is on emotion is, as any marketer will tell you, or any seasoned copywriter will tell you, is that it's emotion that actually engages and actually converts. We like to think we're rational animals, but we're not. We buy stuff because we want stuff. And then we might rationalize it afterwards. But we guess our decisions to buy are almost always emotional. And I don't care whether that's B2B or B2C. It's like, there's a lot of emotion in there. And emotion is not something that these AI tools do well. Now, you can prompt them into that. You can prompt them to think about that and to write in a slightly more engaging conversational way. But I still think there is a place for the human there who can add a layer that AI cannot achieve. Certainly not yet.
Hmm. Well, and I think you call that emotional intelligence. So it's kind of like the artificial plus the emotional
Right.
intelligence. And to your point, that is, I think, where the copywriter kind of has to move, is to take the artificial intelligence and the results that come out of that, but then trying to figure out how to really touch on the heartstrings of their consumers, whatever that means. And to your point as well, the people buy from friends, they don't buy from machines, so to
Right.
speak. And it is absolutely the emotion that's part of it. And that's why brand is so important.
Right.
You have to have the brand. People have this image and perception of what the brand is compared to other brands, and it's that emotional piece that is so critical. And so how do you see that all evolving now?
Well, just to that point before I move on, something I talk about is the sameness trap. So if there are three companies in the same industry selling the same products or services, and they all use GPT-4, and they all use top 20 prompts or the top 50 prompts they picked up from Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever, there's a danger that you're going to sound the same. It's inevitable. You're using the same tools, same prompts, same output. And as a brand, that's the last thing you want. You've spent millions of dollars trying to differentiate your brand from others. And all of a sudden now, if you use these tools without care and without thought, you can undermine everything that you did. So what I'm saying to copywriters now and to marketers, but specifically to copywriters, is one, lean into AI. You cannot, if you ignore it, it'll be the death of you, like professionally. You have to lean into AI. Hey, it's like not to is like the horse and cart company saying no to Ford, back in 1907, 1908, the motor car. You can't say no to the rise of the motor car. You can either change your own direction or get kind of run over by it. But then I'm also saying to people, look, one, lean into AI, but like everyone's going to do that. But to give yourself extra value is lean into emotional intelligence as well. Because there's so many wins coming out of emotional intelligence. It makes the copy more compelling. It allows you to differentiate your brand, to preserve your brand voice. There's just a lot of goodness comes out of being emotionally intelligent, of listening, of understanding who you're talking to, of having empathy for your audience. So everything is going to get better. And in fact, you can work better with your colleagues by being more empathetic and more emotionally intelligent. So I think I think emotional intelligence is a very powerful thing to bring into the conversation right now from a marketing point of view, and just like a workflow. And hey, because I haven't seen or heard a lot about it, but the rise of AI within organizations, I can see some difficulties, some friction between people or departments or whatever coming out of this. So yeah, I think we have to be kind. I think we have to be keep in touch with our emotions here. I'm rambling a bit, but it's such a complicated like area to talk about and to be clear or certain about.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of like your point. The sameness, and I can see, right now we're probably on the cusp of companies, starting to use it, companies being more mature at using it, and then at some point, is going to be like a sameness piece, and then at some point, then those users that are smart and realize that everybody's using Chat GPT-4, then they have to figure out how to write their prompts so that they can build in that emotion of their brand and make
Right.
sure that the answers are actually, fully driving the value of their brand and the emotional side of that. I really like your point there. That really does make a lot of sense. So let's talk about this sameness and the sameness trap. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, like I say, it's just a danger as people. It's almost like stage one of using this, and I don't work within a large organization but from what I understand, in mid-sized large companies, a lot of them are still trying to put together their own internal policy on the usage of AI within the company or organization. A lot of individuals within the company might be almost certainly are using it personally. They might be using it personally at work without permission and without coordination. But I think when things get rolling, we're going to see a lot of that sameness because people will be. It is so attractive to be able to generate 100 times as much copy and content for a thousandth of the price, which is really what we're looking at. That is going to be hugely attractive to a data-driven organization. It's like, hey, look at the upside here. And I think that is where the danger lies, is that you push too many people out of the loop and you're just relying on the technology. And like I say, you're using the same technology, the same top prompts, and you're getting the same kind of output. And I
Mm.
think a lot of companies are going to wake up and think, whoops, mistake. Now we sound just like the competition. So that the whole concept of the human in the loop, that comes out of the development of these models. There's a human in there to exercise judgment of like, hey, is this thing being too much hallucinating? Is it too racist? Is it just wrong? So there's a human in the loop when it comes to the creation and training of these models. And I think there needs to be a human or many humans in the loop when it comes to use of them within companies. So yes, absolutely double down on the use of this technology, but keep humans in the loop so that you can be aware of if you're getting close to that sameness trap, and you can kind of move sideways a bit, and make sure you're still differentiating your brand and maintaining your brand voice, protecting your brand voice.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that's kind of interesting. I guess if I were, as you were talking, I was thinking, if I want to have the personality of the brand kind of specified, and then also the personality of, let's say, the top two or three competitors clearly, written up and specified. And then, I was thinking you could use that as part of your differentiator in your prompt to say, okay, here's brand one, brand two, brand three, write an email that's highly differentiated for brand one against brand two and brand three, write a series of social media posts or what have you, so that they are hitting on the emotional side of the brand. And then to your point as well, is you have to have a human in the middle there to make sure that you're not coming up with something that's basically the same every time.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a kind of weird sort of irony here, I guess, is that I can actually use these tools to bring out some of that emotional language. So one of my favorite things to do is, say, for a product or service, I will gather together like 50 reviews, or I'll find a transcript of customer service interactions and things like that. And I'll get thousands of words of feedback from customers or interaction with customers. I'll put it into these tools and I'll say, create a sentiment analysis for me.
Mm.
and then it'll come up and it does it very, very quickly. These tools are incredibly
Yeah.
good at crunching this kind of data, and it's incredibly hard for our human brain to do the same thing. But these tools do it very, very quickly, very, very well. And one of the things I've done in the past, I said, okay, on that plus side, where people are saying nice things, what is the language they're using? What are the phrases they're using? And it'll come back and show me. And then I'll go in and say, okay, now write me an email selling this product, but mirroring the language of happy customers as you do it. And like this is like, and it doesn't always get it exactly right. But it's such, to me, is such an interesting concept that I'm using this tool to pick out the emotional elements and then to use that in its own output when I prompt it to do so.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I really like to your point is yeah, pick out the happy customers,
Yeah.
pick out the unhappy customers, and figure out what's going on there.
And I can, hey, if let's say I'm doing, business to business is a longer sales cycle, and I actually want to identify, what's getting in the way. I might ask it to say, okay, now show me the negatives.
Mm,
What are the stumbling blocks here? What is stopping people from being happy with this product or service? So I can go both ways with it. But it's kind of fun because I'm using a machine to identify emotion for me.
mm,
And that whole mirroring thing is super powerful to me. And again, this is a differentiator. It can be. If you use these tools just with a 5-word prompt or a 10-word prompt, you're going to get something back fairly bland. All right. But if you really work at it this way, you can actually begin to prompt it with these kind of emotional kind of triggers, as you were, within the prompts, and actually get out some very different output. So it doesn't have to be the same. It just it's I think a lot of the skill set for writers and other people in the future will be just very advanced skills in not just that first prompt, but
mm.
also the follow-up prompts. Another thing, stop me if I ramble too long, but that I like to do is I might have in my mind that, hey, I want to ask GPT-4 or Gemini or whatever. I want to ask this question, and I want to say, okay, give me this in 7 steps. Or so I'm leading. I'm treating it like I'm the human, and it's a software tool, and I'm going to ask it what to do. And what I've learned more recently is that at times I should pause and I say, hang on, what do you think? What do you think is the best way? I've been telling you how I want to see this expressed. What do you think is the best way to see this expressed? And again, not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time, I look at that output and I think, wow, I wish I'd stopped to ask that. Because this is such a different experience for us as humans. We're used to using software where it does what we tell it to do because it's programmed to do that. And we're used to using Google search, but we're not used to interacting with a co-intelligence. So
Yeah.
we tend to be us first, leaning in, do this, do this, do this, do this, execute this. Whereas I think we do well sometimes just pause and say, hang on, what do you think? How would you express it? How would you structure this? I've said this is how I'd like to structure this presentation, but how would you do it?
Mm.
And again, you can get some very surprising, very interesting output from that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I hadn't thought about, what do you think kind of as a question. And you're right. I mean, it's so easy to put in a prompt with, 5 or 10 words and but then to, take it to the next level and put a lot of qualifiers in there and a lot of background in it and end up with a much, much larger, much more detailed and more robust prompt that can answer that. Just curious, have you played with the temperature gauge or whatever you call it in ChatGPT?
In the playground area?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, a little bit. A little bit. I tend to leave it at about 1. I believe the default is like 0.7 or something.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh, when I really like the playground. One, because I can play with the temperature, but also I love being able to save those presets.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I can create long prompts, I can save them, and then depending on the client or the project, I just go up and to the drop down, and I select the client, and boom, I've got all this information ready to go. I don't have to rewrite anything or.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, what have you done with what have you done with
I've
the
only
temperature?
played with it. I was just curious, you can, and I don't remember the numbers. It was like point 0.1 versus point 0.9, just to kind of
Right.
put in the same prompt except
Yeah.
temperature equals. And it almost seemed like with the change in the temperature, it seemed like I got more of a, I don't know, a fun slash emotional answer. It might not have been the right one, but nevertheless, it was just kind of it was very it was good that way. Our my team, of marketing copywriters, they'll write a blog post, and one of the things that drives me nuts is that there's two words that ChatGPT always uses, and we're going to delve into the realm of something, and
So,
delve and realm. They just
or
keep coming up, and I go, get rid of those words.
in conclusion,
Yeah,
and somebody tell GPT-4 or ChatGPT that every headline in the world has to have a colon halfway through.
yeah.
I'll tell you another way that I try to avoid the sameness trap myself is that let's say I'm doing some brainstorming and I want some topic ideas for a blog or articles or something. I say, okay, give me 10 ideas for or 20 ideas for, and I might show it some previous work as
Mm.
context. And it does. And then I'll look at it, I'll go, nah. And then one of my favorite phrases is I'll go back in and say, give me a non-obvious list or a list of non-obvious topics.
Oh,
Because it'll always
nice.
give you the obvious stuff. So I specifically ask for the non-obvious. And then you can get some really interesting stuff comes back. Because let's say it's 10, probably like 3 or 4 out of those 10, I think that's really interesting. Let's
Mm,
write about that.
mm.
So you can and you have to, I think, as a writer or marketer, we're going back to that thing, not just a 5 word prompt. You've got to think it through a bit. Like how do I get the best out of this? How do I get something different out of this? So yeah, collaborate rather than always be the leader.
Mm.
Ask what do you think, and also specifically ask for non-obvious.
Yeah, I really like that. And sorry, I'm going to steal a lot of your thunder here. Well, not your thunder, but your ideas. Oh man,
That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We're here to
that's
share.
right. That's right. I really like that non-obvious because you're right. It does give you the obvious stuff because it's basically saying what's the next best word and what's, and using that. And of course,
It will
it
it will
whatever
def
that
it will
algorithm is, that's what it does.
it will default to the obvious. It will
Yeah, yeah,
default
yeah,
to the expected. And again, that is where people fall into the sameness trap because that's what too many people are doing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Wow, so that really makes sense. So what is so now that we're in the process of everyone learning how to write prompts and getting better at writing prompts and writing different so that you can deliver differentiable content.
Right.
So what do you think is the next best thing after that? So or do you want to put that
Well,
in the AI and see what comes out?
I go through the process we've talked about, and then there's the final output that I get from the model. Sometimes, if it's content, if it's an article, a blog post, if I work hard enough, it can be pretty close, and I'll probably tweak a bit. And like I say, I'll look for those phrases that kind of scream AI. Um, if it's something, if it's sales copy or marketing copy or any kind of marketing communications, I will try harder, and I will take that. And there are 2 or 3 things that I want to layer in if I can see an opportunity. One is story, because story is so compelling
Hmm.
to people. It is such a shared. We can be complete strangers and we'll both have a story about our grandma or our puppy or our beach vacation. Sharing a quick story is a great way of getting close with someone. I will also use sensory experience and sensory language. Like I say, ChatGPT doesn't know what it feels like to walk on the beach with barefoot on the waterline. It can't do that. It can read about it, but it can't do it. So again, I might be looking for customer stories. I might be looking for, it could be a founder story. I'm looking for if I can introduce that some kind of sensory experience because we got 5 senses and ChatGPT does not. And also, if I do that, if I weave in some stories, some sensory, and also the language, my language, I want to make it, if I'm telling stories, if I want to get close to someone, I'm going to use conversational language rather than hard-hitting marketing language. Because we tend to step back a bit if the
Mm,
language is too
mm,
hard-hitting, right? We're being sold that, step back. Like, but if it's conversational, if it's everyday language, if it's emotionally intelligent language, if I feel I'm being heard, then that's very powerful. So these are the elements that I'll try to weave into marketing communications kind of copy after I've got that final output. And how much I can do depends on, what kind of stories are available, but it also depends on how far the model got me. How far did I manage to get? Because I can say to GPT-4, hey, open this with a story, and it'll make up a story.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
usually a fairly thin story. It's not may not be a very compelling story, and I may change that. So I did I did that a while back. I was writing something, and I said, "Hey, open just with an anecdote, a story. I want to personalize this," and it did, and it was okay, but it wasn't great. But the story was close enough to one of my own that I replaced it with my own.
Mm,
When you do that, and it's really hard to identify where the difference lies, but you really can make a difference when it's your own thing rather than generated automatically. So it's the AI can do emotion, but it really cannot do the nuance of emotion. And as humans, we are incredibly attuned to that and sensitive to that, the nuance of emotion. So that's a differentiator. This is again it's how we avoid the sameness trap, but it's also how we write much, much better communications
mm.
and copy and content. Because it engages people at an emotional level, which is always going to be way more powerful than engaging people simply at a cognitive level. So these tools are super good at brain stuff. They're not so good at heart stuff.
Hmm. Have you ever tried to, because as you were talking, and being differentiated, and then also a story, um, in my last book, I used a little bit of Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the epic of this, it was the season of that, and I can't remember all of it, but I kind of use that as kind of the as a string throughout the book. Have you ever, because as you were talking, I was thinking, it would be interesting to have chat GPT, well, AI to write the marketing copy, let's say, and use the voice of Charles Dickens, or something like that. Have you ever tried anything like that, or?
Just I've done it to play, but I haven't say done it on kind of serious work or paid
Mm,
work or client work or my own work. I've just done it to be playful.
yeah. And how did it come out? I'm
You can
just
ask it
curious.
to write sonnets about interstellar travel, which is kind of fun. So so yeah, it's surprisingly good at things like, but again, sonnets, poetry. It's it's amazing that it can do anything and it does do something. But is it great poetry? No, it's not. Again,
Yeah, yeah,
it's that nuanced level
yeah, yeah.
that it lacks.
It's
So
just
go
missing the sand between its toes.
nicely put, sir. Nicely put. But it is if we go back to your earlier question of what should copywriters be doing, one is lean into this and learn it way beyond
Mm,
just the top 10 prompts. You've really got to understand and practice and practice and practice. And this is early days, right? Most of us we're still practicing and
yeah,
learning.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just lean into it. But then, like I say, is that differentiator. One, you can differentiate within the model by doing things like go non-obvious, insert a story and an anecdote,
Mm,
but then always like step back at the end as a human, be the human in the loop when it comes to the final output and say, well, hang on, let me exercise my own judgment. This
yeah,
sounds good, it reads well, but does it kind of hit the mark emotionally? Is the brand voice, are we on brand with the way we might
yeah.
love it, but it might be off brand. So you still need that human in the loop at the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting though. So let's say, just thinking out loud, the new version of, or the new, whatever you call that, the new language learning module with the next 6 months updates. So as copywriters and are now leaning more and more into and using AI, then the AI for the next round will have learned or be learning from what AI just generated. So we're going to be kind of in this self-fulfilling loop of, use AI to write me this marketing copy and put it on my webpage and blah, blah, blah. And then, 6 months from now, the new version of AI will say, wow, look at that. That's over there. So we're going to be, in this self-perpetuating loop of having AI stuff forming AI content.
Right. So this is the kind of the synthetic data story.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so whether that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I don't. But again, I think like probably every guest of yours talking about AI. Hopefully, we're all completely honest and say if you ask us where's this going to be at in 5 years, hopefully everyone is saying I have no idea
yeah,
because I
yeah.
have no idea.
Well, I had one guest on that said, and I really think his analogy is right. The AI is to a marketer what the spreadsheet was to an accountant.
Right. I heard
And I
that one.
really think that that is the case. And I think, if used right, and if like, and you've obviously spent a lot of time at it. I wish I had as much time as you've spent on it. But, really understanding those nuances and being able to leverage that in the proper way and really get that exactly what you're trying to get. And then, of course, adding the emotional intelligence, which is the human review and everything like that, is pretty critical.
It's also completely legitimate to ask yourself, should I be using AI at all? So, as an example, my website. So, my brand is me, nickusborne.com. That's my brand. There is not a word on that website that is generated by AI. It's all me. And it's all me because it has to be me because without my voice, I'm nothing. My brand depends on that voice being
Mm.
mine, that writing being mine. So there are times when I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, no, no AI here. We're going to do this pure human from the bottom up.
Well, so then what you need to do is put in your prompt, write me copy for my webpage, but don't use AI.
Or one thing I've tried, and it's not bad, is I've created a custom GPT based on all my writing.
Mm.
So I can say, based on what you know about my writing, which is a lot, write me, and it
Yeah.
does. But the fact that I haven't published any of that, I've just done it to experiment, to learn. Me write, and so we're getting into the kind of subtle areas that I think are important. If I don't write my own stuff, what does that do to me? Because
Mm.
to write, to me, I'm a writer. I've been a writer for 45 years. To write, for me, to write, to think is to write, to write is to think. I think as I learn, as I write. If I stop writing, am I still learning or am I just getting really good at using these tools and these models?
Yeah, but aren't you though, fair enough, but aren't you though using your writing intelligence to generate the prompts so that they're significantly better prompts, and then you're using a tool that then takes those prompts and the intelligence behind them, and it gets amplified by applying it against everything that's out there on the web. So in some respects, there's kind of a two-phase thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand your point. I've written a handful of books, and I want to write the book, and I want the content, so to speak, to be mine. But on the other hand, I could see where my writing could be significantly better if I wrote the prompts to be able to get,
Right.
the AI to, to help me there.
Hey, it's an interesting path we're trying to navigate here.
Yeah,
But but I,
yeah,
but I do think companies and copywriters need, because like I say, there's going to be this huge pressure to automate marketing, just simply because the bottom line looks so good.
yeah,
Fire everyone and do it in a tenth, hundredth of the time. It's like it's a very very compelling from a numbers point of view. But I think we have to be really careful about that. I think because if you just follow the money, then absolutely you're falling headfirst into that sameness trap. And all your kind of brand work and differentiation over the last 20 years will be, you're just throwing it away. So
yeah,
there will be
yeah,
this kind of conflict and this balance that we have to find.
yeah. Well, there's definitely a balance, and there's definitely going to be a cost savings. I can't
Yes, there will.
imagine
Yeah.
you're going to have some very smart agencies, like yourself, or, as a writer, contractor. But you're going to have very smart agencies that are going to say, we have the best prompt engineering to be able to get, the best out of it and be able to write in your brand's voice, yet it may be half the cost or a third the cost.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to happen now. I think the agencies that are very dependent upon copy and copy delivery are going to have to do that. I think that's going to be their differentiator. And they're going to have to defend themselves because somebody else is going to talk to the CMO and say, "Hey, I can do what you're doing, 50% of the cost."
Right.
So so the pricing on some things is going to have to come down, unfortunately.
Well, WPP, which is what largest ad agency group in the world, has just recently done that deal or doing that deal with Google and Gemini. So they're bringing AI seriously into agencies all over the world. And
Mm.
Publicis, I believe, are doing the same thing. So another huge ad agency group. So yeah,
Yeah,
what you say is definitely happening.
yeah, yeah. Um, Nick, awesome stuff. I could talk here for a long time, but one last question. So, what advice would you give an up and coming new marketer right out of college? What advice would you give that person?
I would say lean into it, like learn as much as you can about it, use it as much as you can. Be the person who can step into a company and say, yes, I understand this. Like it's going to be really hard, I think, for marketers who are just entering the industry to succeed in an interview if they don't have
Mm,
a pretty thorough understanding of AI. I think people hiring are going to be looking for this kind of expertise. And also it's just it is just so darn exciting.
mm. It is. It
Like,
is.
like if you're interested in the space, if you're interested in communications, this is the most exciting thing that has happened, since almost like 1995, the beginning of the kind of commercial web. That was super exciting.
No,
This
it's
is
since
just,
the invention of the pencil.
yeah. And, I mean, this is like if you have a curious mind and if you're excited by communication, this is the most exciting thing that's ever going to happen in your lifetime, I think. So enjoy it and lean in and just bring in the knowledge, but also bring in that excitement and enthusiasm. There's a lot of fear around this, and I get it, and it's totally legitimate. But again, if I was starting out younger, I would just be bursting in with like an intensity and an enthusiasm that would just like, I'd just bring my way through just with raw enthusiasm and excitement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's great advice, and I mean, in general, though, as a marketer, whatever you're going to do, is always be learning. I get
Right.
upset when I talk to somebody and I'm interviewing them, and you could tell they didn't do any work in addition to the other the actual the core work that they're getting graded on, because I
Right.
think they're missing out on so much that they could be doing. So I absolutely agree with you. You have to learn until you
Until you
until you
die.
die. If you're not
Learn until
learning
you
until you
die.
die, then you're going to fall behind.
I'm always excited by stuff. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's kept me going.
Yeah. Well, so Nick, thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate it. And fantastic. I really learned a lot about AI and how to use it. And I'm going to
Oh, I'm glad.
take this video, and we're going to have it read and listened to by my whole team. So where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, I have a website, Nick Usborne. So that's NICKUSBORNE. But as you know, actually, I put together a page where it's nickosborne.com/backstory, where listeners to this can go there and they can sign up. And well, actually, you got a few choices. You can download some freebies. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can check out my course. All up to you. So that's nickosborne.com/backstory.
Wonderful. So Nick usborne.com/backstory, NICKUSBORNE/backstory. Nick, thank you so much and fantastic. And we will definitely put that in the show notes and make sure that we both can take advantage, or our listeners can take advantage of that and go from there.
Excellent.
Otherwise, for the audience, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series and go to marketingmachine.prorelevant.com to learn more about my book, The Post-COVID Marketing Machine. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Nick.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had fun.
Absolutely.